Time for Rubber Dingy Rapids, number 88, 4 lines. Welcome to Long Play Video. Welcome to Long Play Video, running down my 100 favorite films of all time, having a bit of a chat about the film to start with, and then going away and watching and coming back where there will be spoilers. Today's film is number 88 on the list, 4 Lions. And I don't believe this is a film that you've seen before, Kevin. Is that right?
That is correct. I've not seen this film. So,
okay. Here's the DVD. Have a look at it and tell us what you think.
Right. So I know a little bit about this already, but oh wow, okay. Yeah. Not what I was expecting for the DVD cover. It being called 4 Lines. I knew it was sort of about like it's a tongue-in-cheek sort of film about terrorism, which I don't know if that really is the tagline or not, but the front of the DVD's just got what looks like a crow with a bomb attached to it. So not what I anticipated. And then this is just so ridiculous. This is classic of a Chris Morris film. What's it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 15 quotes that take up at least a third of the DVD cover, just saying funny as a quote, and then reference from different sources.
Nothing else from the review. Literally just funny.
So yeah, I think I'd expected lions maybe on the front, but
four of them rather than 15 funnies.
Yeah, it's bizarre, isn't it? Like, this isn't what you'd expect. I guess, I know who Chris Morris is, and I know like some of the pieces that he's done previously, so I shouldn't really be surprised.
Yeah, what would you say about Chris Morris, just in case other people haven't seen it, or what does it being a film by Chris Morris make you think it's gonna be like?
Very on the nose, pushing the boundaries of what people might think is acceptable. Yeah, I do remember he was very much. I feel like he's like, I guess in modern day terms, people think of Charlie Brooker and like Black Mirror and that side, alternative thinking on the edge. This is like, he was like about, I say, Chris Morris was probably 5 to 10 steps further down the line. So very, very much in and around the cancel culture line, probably over it quite a lot. And he was definitely, I guess he was trying to sort of, in some ways, just bring attention to things about how ridiculous certain things were, how absurd some people were, like celebrities and that were endorsing anything in those days. And I think he got them to endorse stuff very much similar, I guess, to like Borat, where Sacha Baron Cohen would get people to admit to ridiculous things that you couldn't believe. It kind of like that, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. How would you describe it?
Yeah, I mean, satire of almost the most extreme examples. I mean, I think Sacha Baron Cohen kind of almost sort of took it to a mass audience, and that's the thing. Chris Morris always sort of, for me, is a very like late night channel for very kind of edgy, sometimes wanders into bad taste. But at the heart of it, I think is that satire piece that is like makes you question yourself as much as like the people that you're laughing at, because I think what he always did well was bring up things that maybe you thought were acceptable as well, and then actually makes you think about things in a bit of a different way. And I think people, quite a lot of people like that, it has actually changed how people think about stuff. So I think like that, and I think the same with Borat and Ali G and all of those characters as well. They did actually like highlight the things that people thought, and actually show them to be not great. And so maybe that's one small step to where we are now, where everyone's a little bit more enlightened and sort of thinking about these things. I think a lot of those comedians actually did some good there.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I look back and think about some of the things he did. I remember watching like Brass Eye was the TV series that he did. And I remember that being like, you were like, oh God, I can't believe he's got some of these celebrities to say these things. And But I never remember thinking at the time. I mean, maybe that was just at the time, but I don't remember thinking at the time, "Oh, this has gone too far," or he's exploiting celebrities, which seems like an impossible sentence to actually say.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't ever remember him really pushing the boundary too far. But what I do remember about when this film did come out, that there was a lot of controversy around it. So I do remember that happening, and I just never got around to watching it. So I wonder if this one, where he went, right, I've not pushed people enough at the TV series, they've not got rid of me, so I'm going to go full throttle with
Well,
this and see what happens.
I mean, on that vein, maybe flip the DVD over
Yeah,
and give us the synopsis from the back of the
yeah.
DVD.
I mean, the great news on the back, there's yet another crow with another bomb strapped to it. I mean, it seems like an art form. And then someone with a giant bazooka. Yeah, okay, so here we go. So when did it come out? 2010. So let's see what. Four Lions tells the story of a group of British jihads who pushed their abstract dreams of glory to the breaking point. As the wheels fly off and their competing ideologies clash, what emerges is an emotionally enraged and entirely plausible farce in a storm of razor-sharp verbal jousting and large-scale set pieces. Four Lions is a comic tour de force. It shows that while terrorism is about ideology, it can also be about idiots. Okay. So we've got Riz Ahmed's in it, Nigel Lindsay, and then directed and written by Chris Morris. An hour and 37. So yeah, okay. So just a casual movie about British jihads. In 2010. Good. What do you remember when you first watched this then?
Yeah, I do actually. I remembered and then had to do a bit of research on exactly where it was. But I saw it actually in a previous screening at the BFI because
Nice.
we were members of the BFI at the time. And my wife sent to me an email saying, "Oh, there's a preview screening," and I responded saying, "Oh yeah, we should definitely go to that because I've heard really good things about it." And funnily enough, I also then saw that week, the same week that we went to see it, we also saw Cabaret at the cinema and Iron Man 2. And
Wow.
I harkened back to the days where I could go to the cinema 3 times in a week and then that'd be fine.
Yeah.
And I think I think I may have actually missed a premiere of a film that maybe I was working with people on, just in case anyone's listening. and I lied about not being able to make it. There was definitely I put in the email, I'll skip the premiere if we're supposed to be going to. In order to watch it. So yeah, I remember I remember going down to the BFI and watching it. With the audience, which was quite funny.
Yeah. And what was like the overarching sort of feel? Like I guess no one was probably thinking at the time. Like, did it feel like it had gone over the lines or anything, or did it just feel like it was close, but it was okay?
Yeah, I think because of the audience, it was almost a bit like, because it's obviously sort of it's film people. So I think there was like an appreciation of what it was and what it did and the questions that it asked in a film.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was a lot of laughs and then a lot of ooh, but the overriding sentiment was like, yeah, that's really well put together. It asks really important questions. I mean, when I was sort of thinking about it, and I haven't seen it since, but when I was sort of thinking about what I would say about it, I'd just say it's an uneasy film. It's an uneasy film to watch. It makes you feel uneasy. The subject matter is uneasy, and I use that in every sense of the term of like, it's uneasy because it leaves you feeling a bit creeped out, but it's also uneasy just because it does actually ask tough questions, and it is satire, but it's also it's not just sort of satire of the group at the middle of it. It's also satire about kind of what takes people to that extreme and the society around them that kind of has that, and it doesn't punch down that much. It's I think it's fun. It's funny. There's a lot to it, I think.
Yeah. I wonder if it'll be interesting to watch it now, actually, because often we talk about the films here, and when you originally watched it, or when they first came out, a lot of them, like I think we said that one of the films would maybe be a 12 or something like that, and now it'd probably be a PG. Like it's a lot, the barriers are sort of changed a bit. So I wonder if this would be dulled down a bit. Like it wouldn't feel as impactful as it did at the time, like because it'd been so different to anything else that had come out at that point, that it would have felt like, oh. Whereas I feel like there's a lot of like dark TV series that are actually available on all streaming platforms, and so I wonder if we'll be a little bit more immune to it, and we'll go, oh, actually, that was fine. That didn't seem that bad at all. Yeah, I know. I definitely remember at the time when it came out, there was controversy around it, and obviously Chris Morris, there's always controversy around him, about him blurring the lines, and as you said, maybe he was actually putting a spotlight on certain things that people should have been talking about and needed to talk about. So is that one of the reasons why maybe it's on your top 100 then?
I just it's in there because just sort of thinking back, it's not the way that I remember it. It's not he's trying to sort of almost make a point that anything can be funny, or it's not like it's not as crass as that. It's about seeing the humor in a very dark situation and showing and balancing both of those things. And that, I think, is what Christopher Morris for me is really good at. He has the light and the dark, and you can be laughing at something at the same time as thinking that it's really sad because it's so ludicrous, but it is also true. And I think that there is slapstick in it, and there are some just funny scenes that are just funny, but then the entire film kind of uses the humor of it to actually make really, really serious points and really, really important points. And for me, that's the way that I remember it, and the reason why it's in there is just that's incredibly difficult to use humor and comedy in order to make a very serious and very poignant point, which is kind of how I remember it.
And the thing is, you said, so I was just going to say, like, in terms of like this what we were talking around as well, like you'd have seen this at the cinema as well, and it was different in those days, right? Like when you'd go out, and it wasn't just on streaming services; it used to be hidden, and people might watch it in their own rooms, and you'd be like, okay. People would actually have to buy a ticket, and you'd see other people in the cinema. You'd know that they were there and they were watching it. So, different feel, right? People would actually have to commit to buying it and be seen to potentially be in the cinema watching it.
Yeah, and I think this is a really good film where I can imagine that you would be swept up in like what the rest of the cinema almost sort of thinks, because it is a bit like you're laughing at stuff, and then you do think, should I be laughing at that? Is that like a prejudice of mine, or is that like actually what it's like? And I mean, it's funny because just listening to some stuff around it, and they said, they sort of premiered it in the US, and it just like went down really badly. Everyone walked out, and then I think he said that they did a showing, I think, in Bradford. And like just the entire crowd just like completely got it and were just in hysterics. And then he sort of says that him and Riz were at the back of the cinema, and they're like, oh, good. Like, actually, like they get it. And like we've done that. But because he does, Chris Morris says, he did a lot of research. Like he really tried to make a lot of the kind of the dynamics feel very true to life. And kind of really wanted, and it's funny because even, he was sort of saying about northern Muslim communities. He was sort of saying like, it's basically like old school British values. It's all about family. It's all about community. It's about helping each other out. And he sort of said, actually, when he was doing the research and he was going in, and he said that one of the families that he sort of spends a lot of time with kind of to get the research and to kind of ask some questions on it. And they would, I think the mum would then always turn up at like screenings and press things and would bring like a tub of curry for him because he always liked it. And he just sort of said like, it's just so sweet that she just, she wanted to cook for me, and she wanted to like sort of, take care of me. And it's and that I think again that's it's just sort of very very true to life, and it shows that I remember it kind of showing the community side of it and stuff, with also like obviously a very extreme kind of plot in the middle of it. So
it's going to be interesting, to see, like you said, about that community piece. And I don't know, because obviously, knowing, like you said, Chris Morris, he is more sort of a bit of comedy, and as you said, sort of satire. So it's going to be interesting to see how much of it feels like this seems a plausible, real scenario with some comedy around it, versus, oh no, this totally feels made up with some comedy around it.
So and it's funny because on the back of it, like the ideology also is about idiots. You're just like, it's really like, it's not about that. Like the person who wrote that, I don't think got the film. It's very difficult to put into words, but there were scenes of pure slapstick. And then there were scenes that are very funny for other reasons, and it's and it's not it's not a slapstick suicide bomber movie. Like that's not the point. Although I'm sure some people maybe think that it is, and so then don't like it and don't want to watch it, which is also kind of fun.
So is there anything else you were thinking it was competing against, or I guess it's fairly niche to get on the list, but maybe, like you said, it's that sort of community scenario. But was anything that you thought that might be competing with this?
No, I mean, I was sort of thinking about the other sort of very dark comedies that sort of make a really important point, but are really dark. And I don't think there's anything for me that does it as well as I remember this doing it. Because it is all about, and I think it's also just, I just think it's really, really British humor, because it is satire, it is ironic, it is it's so dry, and obviously very very dark humor, that I was trying to listen to a couple of American podcasts, and they just sort of dismissed it. And maybe, but like I think there's a very specific brand of humor that actually as you say, I think it'll be really interesting to see whether the satire does hold up, because you do kind of become a bit more immune to it. And you do, you obviously, what is satire? I mean, over the last 10 years, like what was satire 20 years ago? It's just the norm now. But then, I think at the same time, I think it will hold up. And I haven't seen it since, because it's not a, it's not a, gonna watch it every week. It's really dark. So
everyone's come round. Oh, it's movie night. Hey guys, just gonna whack on 4 lions.
I'm not gonna watch it with my daughter. And
why are there so many crows in this? Where are the lions? Maybe that's what was confusing the American audience. They're like, do they think that crows are lions in the UK?
And I would, we have to say, because my wife loved this film and thought it was really funny. So it's not a British and American thing, but it is. There is there's a type of British humor, I think, that is what British people and British humor is almost known for, and I think this is it. So that is fair. We should put out, obviously, your wife is American, but does have a very good, dry, dark sense of humor. So do you think she'll watch this with you? Maybe she remembered. I said, do you remember what you thought of it? And she said, oh yeah, it was really funny, wasn't it? And and funnily enough, she said, we went to the BFI to watch it. So and then funnily enough, she asked if Cabaret was on the list, because we did really like that as well, actually. Again, another film that's quite dark, but quite good.
So many films. I mean, it's hard to believe that some of the classics have missed out when you've got quality like Juliet Naked or
and obviously Iron Man 2 the same week. We already had the origin story for Whiplash, so you're fine.
Very true. That would have confused me if we had done too. I was like, I don't even know. I think we've already done this. He's his drummer. Let's move on.
So okay. What I would say, put your put your seatbelt on, strap
Yeah.
in, go and whack the DVD into the back room. But it'll be it'll be an interesting one, and we'll see whether we make it through.
Am I going to need to like prepare like a really happy Spotify playlist after this, just to bring me back up a little bit just before? Don't watch it late at night, just in case.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it makes you think. It is funny.
Yeah.
Like it is. I mean, 15 different people thought it was funny on the front of the DVD cover. So yeah, it is funny. It's also it's a very hard watch, and it does make you feel uneasy. But that's as we've said, I think before, you get an emotional reaction from this film, and to a certain extent, like that's all you can ask for. So yeah. Well, I have no idea what I'm going to say, whether you like this or not. So I'm not even gonna do that. So actually, I'll go and put it on in the back room, and then we'll come back after the break.
And then we'll just go and watch it. Nice. Thought-provoking, I think, was overarching or sort of conflicted as well. It's a really interesting film, and I think actually it really reminded me actually of what Chris Morris is like, and what his projects are like, in that it's kind of like this bumbling comedy, and you're like, oh yeah, it's funny and you should be laughing, but then you're like, oh, it's actually also a sad portrayal of a very poignant topic of some humans wanting to kill some other humans, and he does that so well. I forget how well he did that on our Brass Eye, and the Day Today, I think, was his other show. It's just you're kind of like, should I be laughing? Should I not be laughing? And I think he really gets that sort of, he plays that edge really well. And I think that's maybe why sometimes these things aren't as successful, because people just want one or the other, and they're like, well, why isn't it as funny? Or why isn't it as serious? And it's like, well, that's the whole point. He's playing that fine line to, make you think about it, but also hopefully bring a bit of levity to your life as well. Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, what did you think about rewatching it?
Yeah, so it's interesting because on the rewatch, obviously, kind of all of the funny sort of silly bits, I already knew, and actually, I kind of then found that then the sort of almost sort of serious and satirical bits just didn't really hold up as well. And this is like the first film where I was pretty disappointed, because it just wasn't as good as I remember. I think it's sort of because sort of the slapstick bit that I think sort of almost lightens the satire. It's a bit like, I've already seen them, and it's a bit like, when you've seen a trailer and you've seen all the good bits from a movie. So I'm like, I know that's funny, and I remember laughing at it the first time. But then I actually found like the satire piece, and maybe it's also aged badly, but I was a bit like, is this actually a thing?
I was struggling to think about where this sort of fits in, and like thinking about if it did come out now, what sort of reception would it get? And it's things like, even like the bazooka thing, like you can see that the arrow's the wrong way, you can see something hilarious is about to happen, but I mean, even then I didn't picture that they would do it so well, where he flips up in the air, and you're like, wow, I guess that probably would happen if you didn't know what you were doing with a bazooka. And so it's really great, and it's funny, but then he still pulls it back at the end of that scene, or during that scene, in that the bazooka doesn't just go and hit like a bit of the desert. It then hits and triumphs people and kills people. And you're like, and he just pulls that back. It was like, it was, I did think, having never seen this film and then heard about it previously, I did think it would be more, I would think it more as a comedy. But I wouldn't say that I didn't think that I thought it was bad. I thought it was, like I said, it was thought-provoking. It was I thought the acting was very good.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I was reading some of the reviews and reading some of the pieces from some of the actors, and they had spoken about how, you know, they had done some, like Riz had done like another film, and he was coming back from filming
from
that,
Guantanamo. Yeah.
and he basically effectively got sort of strip search at Luton.
Yeah.
And so it was interesting. You're thinking, well, actually, at that time, it must have been, and probably still, well, very much probably still to an extent now in Western cultures, where being a Muslim is scary, right? And that was the thing. The media and everyone was portraying, you know, these, you know, extremists as, you know, the devil incarnate, and they were perfect humans that were, you know, just, you know, they could take you out at any point. They knew exactly what they were doing. It was precision. And, you know, I guess for him, that all that fear was built up in certainly in the UK, that yeah, then he gets exposed to that when he comes back from the film. And actually, that's what I guess this film's trying to sort of debunk a little bit. It's like, you know, the media's built up this huge like fear factor and this scaremongering. And it's not that we shouldn't be, you know, vigilant and mindful, but that doesn't mean that every single person that might look like this or may not be a Muslim is also a terrorist. And I think that's where, you know, he sort of adds that piece to it that I thought, and then obviously that's obviously where, you know, Riz was obviously a bit apprehensive about potentially joining the film at the start, but then he realizes actually this is going to be a good talking point and a good film to, you know, especially at that time as well, was, you know, only 5 years after the 7/7 bombings. So,
No, and I think that's what it does do really well. I think the dynamic of the group and kind of, you know, showing that, like, you know, Barry's in there just because he's a psychopath. And then like the others are in there because they're kind of following, Omar with Ahmed's character. And then Omar's in there because actually almost he's almost sort of the sort of, the one that wants purpose the most. And I think what I would say I noticed a lot more this time was that comparison between Barry and Omar, and almost like, Barry is just an out and out psychopath, like a loud psychopath almost, but Omar's like a quiet one. And actually, you know, like, you know, right at the end as well, he's like, you know, when he sort of say, oh, you killed the other guy. And he's like, yeah, and you've just sent that one off like your mate off to die. And I think that was sort of, that was actually sort of more present than I remember it. And because obviously Barry's sort of the punchline a lot of the time. And obviously like him wanting to bomb the mosque in order to then get them to wise up, but to also do a video saying that he's the one that bombed the mosque. Like that does like play on a lot of levels. It kind of, it reminds me of, did you ever read The Wave at school?
No.
It was about like it was sort of a school project where they basically sort of start a group, not like Nazism, but like almost sort of they start something that is like, okay, well, there's these people who are in the wave, and then there's the people outside of the wave, and it's all about like why people get involved in it. And like one of the kids doesn't have any friends, but then like through the wave, he sort of becomes really popular and really important. And then like they stop the experiment because it's gone too far, and that person's just kind of then really lonely. And I think it reminds me of that, where I think a couple of the characters are just in it because they want to hang out with someone, and it's not like that they sort of believe anything in particular. It's just like, I just want to fit in, or just want a group to hang out with. And I do think it does do that very, very well, and does sort of show that like, as you say, like you can't, even in a supposed like suicide bomb squad, they're not all the same. Like everyone is an individual, and everyone does have their own reasons, and everyone does have their own motivations, which I do think it does do quite well.
Yeah, and it is interesting. You're right. They add in that levity of the new character that they bring in, and how, you know, he's just sitting there listening to the music with his headphones on with the neighbor, with all the bleach and all the bombs around them. And you're like, and you're right. It just sort of reeked of the fact that he just actually just wanted to, you know, just enjoy life and actually just see people and stuff. And obviously that then comes out at the end where he runs to the policeman. He's like, no, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And I guess that's what the classic sort of Chris Morris thing again is, that you think, okay, he maybe get arrested or whatever and he'll get fined. But it's like, no, Chris Morris is like, no, they blow him up.
Yeah.
And you're like,
push it.
whoa. Yeah, exactly. You're right. He always pushes the lines. And it is interesting. I was listening to a lot of reviews of him, of what he talked about this. And, you know, he kind of says a lot around, he wanted to, you know, like I said, remove a lot of the fear. And he said he kind of wanted to do what Dad's Army did for the Nazis, you know, like sort of make them not seem like this, you know, superior being, like this Aryan race, effectively, of, you know, superhumans that was going to take over the world, and actually be, no, it's, you know, they're just humans that are, you know, still going to make lots of mistakes, and actually, you know, you shouldn't be in complete fear of them. And you know, it doesn't mean that everyone from Germany is a Nazi and things like that. So yeah, I thought he treads the line very, very thinly, and it was very classic Chris Morris, I thought. Well,
even so the point where the part where the guy stands up with the fake bomb and is like, oh, you think it's real because I'm a Muslim, but then he is actually a suicide bomber because he's then doing it. And so like that's the thing, like there's a lot of, as a scene, there's a lot of layers to that. Right. And it is, and again, to a certain extent, it is kind of like highlighting the as much like how stupid people's perception of that person is, like, and the fear and the and the racism and everything else that kind of that is projected onto them. It is, you know, it doesn't spare the audience. It doesn't say, oh, you know, well, you know, all of the, you know, the white characters are fine and they're not just as bad, which is actually, it's then a bit jarring with the police and like like the shooting the Wookiee. Like you're like, yeah, okay, I get the funny part. Like, it's a Wookiee, is it a bear, is it a bear? Like, and you're like, yeah, but you still shot someone, and so you're just a bit like, what? That's just a bit extreme, isn't it? And then that's the thing. Like, he takes the joke all the way to the end, which I don't know. I guess is good in some ways, but in others, it's a bit charming.
Yeah, and I think you're right. That, as you said, like that is classic here, isn't it? Really, it's that, you know, it's something terrible has happened, but he's then added comedy over it, or he starts off with comedy and then something terrible happens, and so you're in this sort of like circle going of confusion. Like, should I be laughing? Should I be sad? And you know, he does do it very well. And you're right, that was a good scene actually. And he's like, well, yeah, is it a bear? He's like, no, it's a Wookiee. Is it a honey monster? And you're just like, that was quite good. And that, you still see them running and stuff, and it was fairly tense. And that was something I did notice actually. He didn't really have too much music in it. I mean, obviously there's a couple of scenes where they're actually listening to music and singing along to it. But, you know, sort of background music that you get in a lot of films, there isn't a lot of that. There's a lot of actual sort of, when they're moving from A to B, it's just them, you know, it's just more quiet, or them, you know, actually you just hear their footsteps, and then they start talking. So there's a lot more those scenes, I thought.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of the shots are almost as if they are under surveillance, which I think is what he's kind of going for, isn't it? Is that actually like, are they under surveillance? Because a lot of the shots are like, you know, peeking around a corner, or like the infrared cameras and stuff like that. And then obviously they are under surveillance, but actually it's the brother that's under the surveillance, because he's sort of almost sort of a more visible Muslim. So then that's the person that then the police go at, which I do think they did that like well, sort of almost sort of juxtaposing between the group, like having the argument about the rubber dinghy rapids, and then like the police barging in, but they're actually barging into to the brothers, which I think at the time, I mean, you know, there's obviously, I think there's been way more commentary since, with sort of most Muslims saying, but like being a suicide bomber is against Islam, because you're not supposed to kill yourself. And I think that sort of it's like, but these people are the more extreme just because they're living, but actually like they're living the laws would actually mean that they weren't going to be terrorists. And I think there is a lot more, I think, sort of awareness of that now. than maybe there was back then. But I do think that's again, they do well with that scene kind of, sort of flipping between the two.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, isn't it? When it came out, it would have been really a lot more jarring for people, I think. And that's probably a good thing that it did expose people's opinions and their stereotypes more. And maybe this was like you're saying now, you watch it now and go, oh, actually, it's when you take out the funny moments, it's not as good a film as I thought it was. But maybe that was the thing. And the time, it was so poignant and it was needed at that point.
Yeah.
That now, we have moved on. You'd hope we'd moved on quite a long way from then. That actually, you, like you said, does it seem dated? Because actually, this is a bit silly now. But maybe you needed that sort of entry point where, like, how do we get people to start thinking that, not all Muslims are terrorists and things like that?
Yeah.
And we have to then try and lay some comedy around it for people to actually, what as a vehicle to introduce them to that sort of thought process.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. It made me think about, is it possible to do satire when like nuance is introduced? Like almost satire almost relies on stereotypes, because as soon as you take away stereotypes, then there's almost nothing to base the satire on. And I think that's, that's the same for everyone, right? The British people not being able to talk about their emotions, Americans being loud, just all the way around. I think as soon as you sort of are like, but that's not actually what those type of people are like, then obviously you can't almost play against that as a satire. So I think like at the time, there wasn't a lot of nuance. I don't think obviously, the beginning of the 2000s, certainly for me was sort of the first time almost that I'd ever thought about Muslim and Islam as a religion, because it just didn't come up in England, in the South for sure.
Yeah.
And so then I feel like there wasn't a lot of nuance there, and it's kind of in it. And obviously now, it's just so much more common that you'll see. You'll sort of see things in the shops. You see, it's much more, part of, just part of everyday life, which is good. But then that means that that the satire isn't there. And then, I thought a lot of the jokes and stuff were punching quite far down and just sort of them being stupid and stuff, which is, I mean, it's fine. It's slapstick, but obviously slapstick jokes don't really stand up to a second viewing, do they? Because
I think that's the thing, isn't it? Because obviously this was my first view in that, it worked quite well, and they do interlace the comedy with like the challenging moments well on the first viewing. Yeah. But even so, like I remember the controversy around this, and I watched this thinking, oh wow, is this going to be like really on edge? And I watch it now and think, no, it doesn't seem that edgy at all, really. Yeah. But at the time it was, and you're right, we're probably just a bit more, if we're more desensitized to things as a whole, or maybe we're just more worldly, I'm not sure. But there's a lot more sort of information out there and a lot more views and things like that. So maybe we're just a bit more, open to these things. So it just didn't feel like as jarring as I think when it first came out. I think people would have been like, oh, wow, okay, this is a little bit much. So and I think that would have been the case.
Yeah, and as you say, I think maybe it sparked a conversation, which is good, and that and that conversation has happened and is happening. So actually, it's of its time, but maybe it then doesn't stand up. It's funny to see Cumberbatch to turn up as well. Don't remember.
I was literally about to say that, and So you didn't remember him coming up either?
No. I mean, I think at the time, like he was a nobody, right? I think
I guess he would have been.
Yeah. So, and I did think that was a really funny line actually, when he's like, "Oh, you like the fun fair?" And then the guy says, "Fun fair? It's a theme park. How old are you?"
Yeah. That scene was really bizarre, wasn't it? It was such a strange scene. And he's sort of negotiating okay with him. And then he just goes down this really strange rabbit hole. And you're like, okay, what's going on here? Are you sure you're a negotiator?
Yeah. And then that's it. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, and then some of the jokes and stuff, there seemed a lot of jokes about being gay, which I think maybe was more of a 2010 thing, because you're just a bit like, so why is that funny? Like, I don't know. I think it's just it's certainly dated from some of those. What did you think with Omar and sort of seeing his family life and sort of the wife and child so much? I don't know. What did you think? How did that come across on the first viewing?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I mean, obviously, it is sort of a comedy satire. So you don't have really the flexibility to spend an hour setting up why he feels like this, what his views are, why his family agrees with him. So you kind of have to just move on from that point and just accept that everyone's in the same boat. So it is a bit strange that he's just at home, just like what you'd call a so-called normal life, just chilling out, having breakfast. And then they're just talking and watching the videos, and she's like, "Oh wow, yeah, you're great there. That's awesome. That's so good."
Yeah.
But they're basically talking about the fact that he's going to kill himself, and it's a bit surreal. And obviously the son being there, and the funny stories that he tells, telling his son about the Lion King. Yeah. So I mean, it is, and obviously, like they really sort of, I think the water pistol scene is quite a funny one, because they really sort of break it all back down. And you're like, it just just people having fun, right? And then, but somehow also they are, this guy is a suicide bomber, and then you've just got the extreme. I mean, obviously they portray his brother as a real sort of extreme Muslim, and so when he's like, I can't even enter the same room as you, and I don't know if they do that deliberately just to see, there's someone who's an extreme Muslim doesn't necessarily be they are a terrorist. And someone who's just your next door neighbor who you just get on with, who you see running down the road or whatever, doesn't mean they're not a terrorist. It's not like it's trying to say to you that that's not, like, to your point, you can't pigeonhole and stereotype people and believe that they just that person, or profile people, I guess. That person is that person, and so it was a bit strange, because they were all just sort of accepting of it, and you're like, oh, okay, everyone's just sort of on the same page. But what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, it was. And I remember sort of the Lion King story sort of being a good, sort of, I think that's actually like it's sort of good, because it kind of explains the way that Omar sees the world almost to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And then I think that was good. But I think that the sort of the wife's character is a bit thin for me. Like there's she's got to have some motivation. And obviously there's a bit like, when she sort of says, "Oh, well, you were happier when you were going to blow yourself up," or something like that, which is a funny line. And also like, well, it can't be God's will to like leave them with Barry, and almost, but then, I don't know. I think it needed more. I think, it's just kind of a bit thin there, that you kind of need a bit more to see that family dynamic. And I think that is what they're trying to do, is to say, you can't judge it by what it looks like, and you can't judge anyone by what they look like. But on second viewing, again, just doesn't really stand up as well.
Yeah, you don't think it, and that is something that I was going to ask you. What is it that you think that maybe dated or doesn't stand up as well? But is that one of the things you think it doesn't really cut through on the second viewing, and also a second viewing in 2023?
No, I do. I think for me, it's just the satire of it is kind of what dates it, because I just don't think you do the satire in the same way, and it's almost funny, because I think that's the same with a lot of satire. When you look at it, like, it doesn't hold up well, because you have to kind of be living it. The other thing
go on.
The other thing that I was thinking around kind of what dates it is suicide bombers kind of themselves, because, as you say, like 5 years after the London bombs, which I was in central London on the day, and obviously I was told not to stand by the windows and stuff like that, but so and I remember sort of after that there was this real sort of fear of them, but then and funnily enough, in some of the reviews that sort of talk about it and say, well, and then maybe this is unwittingly been the same as the Boston Marathon, But obviously the Boston Marathon wasn't suicide bombers, it was bombers. So I think it's sort of, that's an interesting thing, because it was like, well, you can't stop, if someone literally is going to blow themselves up, there's nothing you can do to stop them. But that has just fallen out of sort of public consciousness in a way, which I have no idea why, but I just that seemed quite jarring in a way, because I was just like, well, I haven't thought about suicide bombers in Britain for a long time now.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I was actually on the tube at 77, and I was on the tube to King's Cross. Like, luckily, I was actually arriving somewhere early, so I was only a few tubes away from that tube, from one of the bombs. So it's pretty crazy to think about that now. And I remember, walking afterwards. I had to walk through London and walk back home. Because everything was closed down. You couldn't get a tube, and it was like mad. But even then afterwards, I don't feel like I remember I would look at anyone and see anyone and think, oh my God, that person could be, a bomber. So I don't think I still had that. And I don't know if that's just because, we grew up in an era where, you had a lot of IRA bombings. And so, and you never really, and it was almost a piece of life, which is a crazy, weird thing to say, but you never knew, like, something could always happen. I remember, when I think they did a big bomb in King's Cross as well, Liverpool Street. And my sister was right near there at the time. And, it is, or maybe it was just a little bit more desensitized to it because, we had the situation with the IRA for such a long time. That actually we were like, okay, I mean, it was horrifically awful. It was terrible. But I don't know. I mean, maybe it is a bit different. And you're right, thinking about suicide bombs. I mean, obviously the way that he does it in the film as well, like, you probably see them. I mean, obviously they don't explode in like blood and gore, but you probably see them sort of explode, and you're like, oh wow, okay, like he's gone. Like when the guy is like trying to carry all the explosives, and they're trying to do the what did they call them, the jog squats or whatever it was, and then he just explodes with the sheep. You're just like, oh whoa, oh okay, he fell over and he's dead. So it was a bit strange, but I didn't think there was much else that they did badly other than Nokia phones, which are definitely well dated, and no one should have a Nokia phone anymore. And if you do, you should leave your apartment now or wherever you are and go and buy a proper phone.
But you'll never get a better game than Snake. So
that's true. I don't know. Is there anything else that you thought that dated it, or I think we've probably covered off most of the things. It sounds like it just didn't work as well for you the next time around. So okay, so then how would you describe it to aliens?
I mean, I just had humans are a complicated bunch, I think. Is the best way to put it. I mean, I think like just even kind of going through all of the different categories and stuff again. I mean, I did say the first half, like, it makes me feel uneasy, and it's an uneasy film, and it's kind of the same with like with thinking about all of the questions. You're just kind of like, but this is a bit of a weird topic to do it on, which is so strange, because obviously there's probably other films on the list that have way more death and way more like killing in them, but then I don't know, there's maybe that's the sort of the skill of the film, is that it makes it feel more real and everything else. So
I really struggled with this. I couldn't really think of anything. I was just like, I could only think of actual like proper descriptions. So I was like, well, that's not good, is it? It's not funny. Even Chris Weiss would be disappointed with what I've written. So
well, did you have though what did you think the overarching like question or like answer that the film is trying to make?
I guess, as we sort of discussed already, a lot of it is around breaking down stereotypes, not thinking that, not profiling people, and not making assumptions about people because of their religion, when you don't know enough about it. And I think that's probably like the key thing for me, is that it's trying to, and in that, and as I'm saying, I'm trying to think back to that time and thinking it would have been a big moment in that time to try and help people understand it. Like now we might understand it a bit more, but at the time, I mean, can you imagine if you were a Muslim person trying to get through an airport in the US or the UK during that time? I mean, this would have been, you'd just been like, well, I know it's going to take me like 4 hours because I'm going to get stopped, I'm going to get searched, I'm going to get questions, and what a horrific thing to have to think about and have to do.
Yeah.
Just
well,
because of,
yeah. Riz Ahmed, so he does an essay in a book called The Good Immigrant, which is an amazing book just generally. But also, his essay is called Airports and Auditions, and he draws a very sort of a very clear parallel between the only time that he's in a room with lots of people that look like him is when he's being detained in an airport and when he's going for roles in movies, which is almost like, and I think he sort of says like, terrorist number one or something like that. And it's sort of very jarring at the time that it was like, well, in both kind of situations, you're very much just pigeonholed on what you look like. And that it's super tough. And it's a great book anyway, because it's got a lot of really great essays, but his in particular is it's just really interesting to sort of get his viewpoint on it.
I do think that's a good point. And I do think about that sometimes when I'm watching films like through the years, you always had these stereotypes that you use as like the villains. So back in the day it was always the Nazis, then it kind of bled out into the Russians a bit more. And I'm now thinking like, who is the stereotype sort of villain now that we use again? And it is funny, isn't it? You do like, I don't know if it's human nature or just, filmmakers want to make it easy for people viewing or something, but they do love to create these stereotypical villains, because then you can go, oh, I can identify with that. I know that they would be bad. It can't just be, Brian from over the road, because hold on a minute. Am I going to have to look at everyone and see that, anyone could be, a villain at any one point? Which, it's probably valid. It could be the case.
Yeah. Well, they want to keep it simple and not have to have a character explain why someone's bad, I guess.
Yeah. So okay then. So what sort of, did you think about any genre that you could potentially change this to?
It's pretty unique.
One.
It's a pretty unique genre anyway, isn't it? Suicide bomber comedy. I'm not sure that I'd ever take on remaking it. I don't think it's going to be one where you're going to get an update. I think it's very skilled. It's very well done. I thought that was probably,
leave it what it is.
Yeah,
I was wondering, like, if you changed it slightly and it wasn't about suicide bombing as such, could it become like some kind of Hunger Games? That was what I was thinking. You just have people sort of chasing each other across like a busy UK, try to sort of, kill each other for some random reason. But you probably have to just bring in bow and arrows rather than bazookas, I think.
Yeah, well, I do know how much you love the Hunger Games. So
yeah. Well, great book. Not sure about the films. Undecided. They've got the new one out. That looks a little bit too blockbustery for me. So I'll review it once I saw it. Actually, we'll talk about this at some point. But I actually left the cinema this week. I forgot to tell you this. Went to the cinema. I left the film early because it was so bad.
Oh, what movie?
Yeah,
you have to tell us.
It's called Freelance,
right.
And it's like a comedy. It is. I guess it's sort of like an action comedy. It's got John Cena in it, and I watched. It was my own fault, really, because for going to see the film, obviously, but I watched half of the trailer and thought, this is okay. So I don't want to watch any more of it because I don't want to find out about it. I'm just going to go and see. The first little bit of the trailer is it's a bit of comedy from John Cena, and it's an action movie, but with him being a bit, funny in it. So that's what I wanted, just something that was just a really easy film to watch. And he's like, have you ever thought about that time? And it's all these army shots going, you've got a real purpose in life and you know what you're doing. And I'm like, okay, yeah, what's going on here? He's going to be like some kind of like Rambo guy. And then he goes, yeah, that didn't happen for me. And then it shoots him saying, I'll become a lawyer. And I'm like, oh, okay, this could be funny. And that was pretty much when I stopped watching the trailer, and that was the first downhill. And then, yeah, the film is awful. I mean, it's basically a complete rip-off of Romancing the Stone, like scene for scene, pretty much, which is, you know, horrific. And what made it maybe this makes it worse for me is Romancing the Stone is one of my favorite films. So
and you give me abuse for romantic comedies.
I know. I didn't want to let this out now because I wanted to save this, but you know, for season 2, but season now it's out the bag. But yeah, and I was thinking, because obviously we've spoken about that a lot on the pod, that, you know, our romantic comedy is a bit dated, and I was really surprised that there's a main male character, main female character, but it's very much the man saving the woman. And I was like, wow, I just didn't think we did films like this anymore.
Didn't we all agree that this wasn't okay anymore? Didn't we? Wasn't there a vote or something?
Yeah. And then there's not really any comedy. I mean, I'll just say to people now, spoilers, in case you do want to watch it. So maybe just disconnect for a little bit.
In case you're listening to a podcast about 4 Lions and you inadvertently...
Yeah, I mean, 4 lines and 3 lines, they're like hand in hand.
It's a double feature.
It's a double feature. So he effectively, his wife says to him at the start that, you know, fairly on in the film, oh, it's not working out, we're going to have to separate, you got to leave tonight and spend a couple of nights somewhere else. And then he goes and does a job instead, and, you know, okay, fine. I mean, obviously that's ridiculous, and it was, you know, it's absurd. But he then ends up going on this job. Obviously, the job goes haywire. He's with this journalist. And then she just comes onto him completely, even though he describes that he's just separated. And I'm like, well, this is all really like that. I'm pretty sure that would happen. So it really like diminishes her character a bit more as well. And then he's sort of thinking about it, but then goes, no, I can't do it. And you're like, dude, you're married with a kid, and you literally it's only separated for a day. What on earth are you doing?
You want a break?
So yeah, yeah. Oh, R.I.P. Matthew Berry. Yeah, and so that sort of happens, and then the whole theme of the movie is that he was in the army, but he basically effectively sort of breaks his back, and so he can't be in the army anymore. And so that's why he doesn't do these sort of missions, and he becomes a lawyer. But he then goes and does one more mission. And of course, in that mission, he may as well do some backflips. It's just ridiculous. Like the first scene, they reference that he's got a bad back, and he just barely sort of stretches himself out. And then after that, he basically just does anything that goes. There's this massive fight scene where he falls on steps. I'm like, your back would be dead by then. I've done that, and it hurts with a good back. So it's like it's just an absurd film, and it was just getting to the end, and I was just like, I just can't watch this anymore. It's just such a bad film, and it was just terrible. It was just so bad, and the rip-off scenes of Romancing the Stone were awful as well. So yeah. Definitely, no one go and watch that film. You'd rather you watch 4 Lions. At least you make some move your life on a little bit more. Well, we're just a slight detour.
Yeah, we'll just settle out that 10-minute rant about freelance. But no, I think that's I think that says everything about the film as well, about 4 Lions. Were there? I mean, that they do get some good lines in.
There were some great lines. Yeah. There was some really, really good lines. Yeah. What did you have?
I mean, I do still like the line, and I knew it was coming, but I do like it when the policeman goes over to them and it's like, you're going to die in those costumes. And Wiz turns around and says, yeah, but it's for a good cause. And you're just like, that's like the epitome of like, you're just like, yeah, you've done, maybe you had that line, and then that's why you decided to actually write the entire movie. What did you have?
That is really good. I like at the start when he's talking to his security guard buddy, and the guy's like, yeah, I'm really into running. Obviously, like you said, the whole thing revolves around, it's going to be the marathon at the end. and he just starts talking about his legs.
Yeah.
And he says, and he's like, I think Lefty just wants it more. It's like, well, his left leg wants to run harder. And then he just starts talking about he's going to push too hard and start running in a circle. It's just, that was crazy. I loved it when Reese says, yeah, look, I'm going to need tomorrow off. And he's like, okay, so what? And he's like, yeah, I'm going to need tomorrow off. And then the next 2 weeks after that.
Yeah.
I'm like, that is a genius way to ask for time off. I thought that was quite good. And then there was obviously lots of like, you know, sweary ones. I don't know if I could mention all these.
The Baby Bell line is obviously was what it was known for at the time as well, I think.
Yeah, I've got that down. And then there was the bit where, you know, he's getting really panicked near the end, and they're like, "Oh, what's happening? What's happening?" And they're obviously testing they're testing the bomb in the microwave. And Omar's character says, "What? Why didn't you call me?" And he goes, "Because I didn't have any credit." And you're just like, it's just so deadpan how he just like, and you kind of like, it's come on, you were annoyed because he didn't call him, but then you're like, yeah, I guess if he didn't have any credit, what could he do? He couldn't really do anything about it. And then obviously, Rubber Dingy Rapids, that comes up quite a lot.
Yeah.
So that was cool. So yeah.
Well, the reviews and you know, the 3-star reviews as we like to do now. Actually, well, one of them was, I don't know, I couldn't watch it because it failed to play, but they still gave it 3 stars, which is a bit weird. But there were 2 in particular. So one was the film was imaginatively conceived and well acted. It addresses an important problem today, the way some young Muslims are politically radicalized and carry out violent plots of a pointless and cruel kind. The gags were potentially funny, but I felt uneasy about this way of making light of people's capacity for violence. And I was like, that sort of sums it up.
Sounds like good review.
Sums it up. And then another one, it says, I think the director, scriptwriter, and actors were brave to tackle this subject. There must be a way of exposing the inhumanity and moral nihilism of these attacks. This film pioneers such attempts, so I'm ambivalent about the film. It is thought-provoking, and yet for all of the idiocy of its characters and the malevolence of their leader, the storyline will appear to some people with mental problems and a violent misconception of their religion. I was a bit like, I'm not sure many people are going to watch this and then it's going to incite violence, because obviously it doesn't glamorize it at all, which seems to be what people are thinking about. And then one that did make me laugh, they said the actual content and genre of the movie was not my type of thing. I thought it would definitely be more appealing to younger age groups, maybe teenagers, as opposed to mid-20-year-old adults like myself. I was like,
what the hell?
Some mid-20-year-old really thinks thinks those teenagers
they're actually 60.
But
give it to those pesky kids. They can watch this film.
And then 5 stars. Have to be honest, never heard of this film. Saw it in Blockbuster Shop and chose it on the basis of the review. 12 funnies from different sources. Surely something's got to be right. So that's fixed. That's exactly what we were going for.
A direct quote from the DVD cover. Wow. It's as if they were in our shop. Amazing.
Exactly. And then 1 star. That's an hour and a half of my life I'll never get back. I think, you know what? Every hour and a half of your life you'll never get back unless you've got a time machine. So
unless you start de-aging. We'll get onto that at some point in the future episodes.
You got a hot tub
hacking. I mean, just talking about that quickly, obviously some of the other films that you've made me watch, I say made me watch, that makes it sound like you've got me at gunpoint, which is possibly incorrect. Someone help me, save me.
We'll put the closed sign on the shop. No one's coming in here. The DVD store. No one's coming in to save you.
I mean, I was happy watching this. The actors are very good. I thought the acting was good. I didn't feel like it was an hour and a half of my life wasted, where, you know, let's not say that some of the others were. Let's just leave that out there and just people can make their own decision. But I didn't feel like it was a bad film to watch from a story perspective, but yeah, like I can imagine on a rewatch it'd be challenging, and also does it still feel a little bit dated in 2023? But yeah, I didn't mind watching it once for sure.
Yeah,
just sort of share that with you.
Yeah, no, thanks. I appreciate it. That's
Nice.
I live for your validation, but
well, because there's some others on this list that I need to have a word with you about, Andy.
But I think that's the interesting one. When I was sort of thinking about whether it can, where it sort of goes in the list, does it stay on the list and stuff. And I think it's really interesting because I think for, there were definitely films on the list that it's like the first time you watch it, it just has such a more of an impact, usually because obviously if the story at the end, changes something, then it's a difficult one.
Yeah.
But for most films, I'd say like, you've got to be able to watch it like 2 or 3 times and still be getting stuff from it. And maybe I went into this with like way higher expectations than I thought. And so then they were kind of disappointed expectations, but there is a lot to like about it. And I think it does a lot of things very well, but I'm not sure that I could, now having watched it a second time, I'm not sure I could say it is one of my favorite movies. There were clearly other movies that I would prefer to watch than this film. So it's, I think it's the first one that goes
off
out.
The list.
Yeah.
Wow. There is room and space for a new film. How exciting is this?
This podcast could literally never end.
Yeah. Well, I've got a great recommendation for you, Andy. You should go and watch this film called Freelance and see if you can add that to your list.
I mean, Romancing the Stone has probably got more of a chance. Actually, I always preferred Jewel of the Nile. Jewel of the Nile?
Jewel of the Nile.
Yeah. I always preferred that one.
Yeah.
I always thought that one was better.
Well, look, maybe one, maybe both might be on my list. Who's to say? Who knows? But, we will potentially find out.
Yeah.
All right then. Well,
don't even know what that does.
Film?
Yeah, don't even know what that does. Do we cover a new film at some stage, or maybe that's season 3? But yeah, the first film to go out, and Chris Morris, if you're listening, I appreciate you. With Ahmed, if you're listening, we appreciate you. It was a good film, but
it was
just not one that I can think I can say with my hand on my heart that it's still a favorite. So.
Yeah, I think as you said, it was still a poignant film. It was very useful in its time, and still, it has a point. And if you've not seen it now, I'd still recommend people watch it at least once. But like you said, it doesn't mean it's necessarily then one of your favorite films. Yeah,
no, exactly. So, first time, new things happening all the time, and the 20-minute detour about a film that you didn't even want to sit through for 20 minutes. But so
it was bad. I need to write a 3-star review on that, actually.
Just so that people don't read it. Next week we've got a banger. We will be answering that age-old question of where do you stand for a corner. Thanks as always to Tom Evans for the theme tune, and we'll see you next week.